Yeah, no, that's such an interesting point. And I think listening to that, I was thinking that you're not just saving people time, you're almost reducing their risk in the operation because, you kind of, I mean, indirectly, of course, they're doing it themselves, but you're providing them with a platform to do that, in some
Yeah,
sense.
yeah,
So,
exactly. So, if you make it easy, people are
mm,
much more likely to do it. If
mm,
it's hard, if you've got to go through Nat's website and hunt through NOTAMs and do a search and then read it, you're not going to do
mm,
it
mm.
because it's just too difficult.
Yeah,
So, make it really simple, really quick, and people are much more likely to do it. If they're more likely to do it, then they're much more likely to fly safely.
yeah,
Simple,
yeah.
isn't it, really?
Then they can get away from the desk job and go out there
Yeah,
and do
exactly.
the flying.
Unlike me.
Well, that's interesting, right? You wanted to get away from a desk job, but I'd imagine you're back to
Yeah, yeah.
that's Dorian. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Varun. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for doing this with us.
Always a pleasure.
Brilliant. So for the people that are listening, this is the second season of the Hammer Missions podcast. This week we've got Dorian from Dronedesk joining us. So Dorian, before we get into Dronedesk and all the amazing things you've been doing over the last couple of years with Dronedesk, I just want to kind of understand, how did you get into drones?
Oh, well, a long story short, I took redundancy from a corporate job and was looking for something to do. And I dabbled in drones previously as a hobby,
Okay.
and thought I was looking for something to do. So I thought, well, why not extend the hobby and see if we can make a business out of it.
Right. And what was the hobby? Was it flying RC planes, helicopters, or something similar?
Drones. So yeah, I had a Spark, and yeah, just used to fly that around for fun, really.
Oh, right. Was it the red one or the white one? There used to be
No, the white
those,
one.
the white
Yeah, yeah,
one. Yeah.
yeah. It was the
Yeah.
white one.
Brilliant. What did you capture with the Spark in the early days?
Nothing very exciting, if I'm honest. No, it was yeah, just down at the beach mainly, just flying over the sea and stuff like that. But nothing that was going to make me a fortune on with media publishing or anything.
Right. Okay. And when did you sort of think, oh, well, this could be more than a hobby, I could do something more with it? Was there sort of something particular that happened that caused you to think that way or, start?
Yeah, so the catalyst was taking leaving my kind of corporate role
Hmm.
and looking for something to do. I didn't really want to get back into um, another corporate role. I,
Hmm.
had uh, uh, enough of sitting in front of a computer all day, and thought, I know drones would be good. That'll get me out of the office.
Right. Okay. I
Yeah,
see.
and out in the great outdoors, and
Mm.
hopefully can earn enough to supplement my yeah, my income uh, from what I was got from redundancy.
And did you then go from the hobby side to operating commercially, or was Drone Desk a straight sort of step from the hobby?
Yeah, no. So I set up a drone company. I did my PFCO,
Hmm.
and this was back in 2018.
Right.
Did my PFCO, set up a company, Sky View Imagery,
Hmm.
um, and yeah, set up a website and started trying to acquire clients. And at that time, I was kind of
Hmm.
didn't really know what I wanted to kind of niche down on. So I was offering everything from wedding photography to surveys.
Right. I see. Okay. And was that with a different set of drones, or were you still using the Spark back then,
Yeah,
or
no, I got myself a P4P.
P4P?
Where yeah, big step
Hmm.
up from a Spark, eh?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so which was a lovely drone actually. So
Hmm.
yeah, and really the first couple of months after the PFCO course,
Hmm.
what I was focusing on really was acquiring clients because I didn't leave a job that that I was able to bring a client base with me. So I was kind of starting from zero really.
Right. Yes.
Um, but in the back of my mind, um, after the course, I was thinking, the flight planning side of things just seemed really clunky, really laborious.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always thinking, well, there's probably a better way to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
that kind of harked back to some of the stuff that I was doing in my kind of corporate career, which was, automation and data analysis, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Um, so I would say probably within a couple of months of the course, I was already planning to do something to make flight planning simpler for myself,
Right.
um, rather than kind of filling in Word documents and spreadsheets and going to all these different websites to find all the data I needed to do a flight plan.
Right.
Um, so yeah, kind of within a couple of months,
Mm.
the writing was on the wall for Skyview imagery, and Dronedesk had already been formed into an embryo, and things were about to change.
Right. Right. Interesting. So was Dronedesk initially a solution to operations managing at sort of your drone business, or was it kind of, was it sort of like a solution to your own problem, where you were like,
Exactly
well, I
that.
want to do less paperwork, and this
Yeah,
is not
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Um, yeah, so the training company, who were great,
Mm-hmm.
I won't mention any names, but at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the course, the end of the PFCO course,
Mm-hmm.
they gave us a pen drive which contained a suite of uh, Word templates, Excel spreadsheets, logs, log templates, and all that kind of stuff,
Wow.
and a list of websites. I think there was about 10 different websites, and they said for every flight you plan, you've got to fill in every one of these documents and all of these spreadsheets, and go to all of these websites and
Mm-hmm.
check all this data.
Mm-hmm.
And it could take,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the complexity of the location you were flying, it could take 3 or 4 hours to plan a flight that might only take you 10 minutes to do, and it
Right.
just seems absurd to me. So yeah,
That's
yeah,
such a good point, actually. Yeah, the flight itself takes 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, and you're spending 3 to 4 hours just planning it or doing all the operations around it.
crazy, right?
Yeah, that is crazy.
And and that's work that's invisible to the client as well. So
Mm.
it's difficult, or it could be difficult, to justify the costs of the flight if you're only there 10 minutes.
Mm.
The client doesn't see, and a lot of clients aren't interested in all the planning stuff that goes on prior to you turning up with your drone and
Mm.
flying for 10 minutes. So it can be a challenge in terms of justifying the costs of um, the
Yeah.
job.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point because that's sort of very prevalent in the industry, isn't it? The client doesn't really see everything that happens before the flight and everything that happens after the flight.
Yeah,
It's only that sort of 20, 40 minutes that they're actually aware of, if at
exactly.
all. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, how do we even change that? Like, how do we kind of get the end customer or client to even realize there's more work, you know?
I I see, as a client, I probably wouldn't be interested
Right.
necessarily.
Hmm.
Um, if I put through the lens of a client, they hire a
Mm.
drone operator to come and do a job.
Yeah.
They're not interested in all the periphery and all the training that they've had necessarily, unless they're a big corporate maybe.
Mm.
Um, all they want is the quality data that they've asked for, and that's all they're
Mm.
interested in paying for.
Yeah.
So I think from a drone operator point of view, what I need to do is not maybe justify all that additional time to the client, pre and post. It's
Right.
maybe uh, shrink that pre and post time that I spend
Mm.
um, planning for the job and post processing whatever I need to do.
Right.
So it's all about finding more efficient ways to do what I need to do,
Mm.
um, and in that way, the margin
Yeah.
versus what you charge the client is going to increase,
Yeah.
um, and without having to bore the client about all the stuff you've had to do, and it's how
Yeah.
painful it is, and
Yeah.
how laborious it is. Yeah,
It's
just
not,
get on with my job that I'm paying you for.
yeah, it's
Give me
not their
my
problem.
data. No, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. And that's such a good point as well, because ultimately the end customer just cares about the value to them, right, as opposed to the cost to you.
Exactly.
And I think there is this tendency in the industry to always sort of charge by time or charge by, which is fine, but at the same time, if you do the job quicker, you can do more jobs. So
Yeah. Yeah,
so
exactly.
there's a balance there. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so at what point was Dronedesk sort of no longer kind of, just an internal solution, and you thought, this could be something interesting for everyone. When did that sort of spark go off?
Well, pretty quickly, to be honest. So
Mhm,
I developed the kind of first MVP, minimal
mhm,
viable product, kind
mhm,
of within a kind of 6 weeks
mhm,
of starting. And
mhm.
then I shared that with a few people that were on the PFCO course with me.
Right.
They got very excited
Mhm,
because obviously they were suffering the same pain as me in terms of having to fill all the bits of paperwork in.
mhm.
Um, and I kind of established a presence on Facebook
Right.
in a few drone operator groups, shared it with a few people there, said, look, I built this. Do you think it might be useful?
Mhm,
Um, Sign up, have a go, see what you think.
mhm.
And very quickly, it kind of grew arms and legs to the extent that I was getting by the kind of 6 months later,
Mhm.
I was getting hundreds of drone pilots signing up because I was giving it
Right.
away free at the time.
Mhm,
And trying the system out, giving me
mhm.
feedback, which
Right.
was fantastic because that meant, I had my own ideas about what the system should do.
Yeah.
Um, but it was very kind of narrowly focused on through my lens. But
Mhm,
to get um, all those professional operators who were established in the business, trying the system out,
mhm.
trying to break it, giving me feedback about what they thought it should do and how it should do it,
Yeah.
was just golden
Yeah.
because it just meant that I was able to develop things that people needed and wanted instead
Mhm.
of just what I thought they needed and wanted.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for feedback from pros, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so true. And I think one of the beautiful things about our industry is that people really like to give feedback, positive or negative.
Yeah,
And I think there are lots of communities online that where people are just very open to sort of sharing and, critiquing or sort of applauding, and I think those are really nice things. And I don't know where that
yeah,
comes from. Do you think that comes from the hobbyist land? Because hobbyists, there's a lot of people that moved in from the hobby land to the commercial world, just like yourself. And if I think of myself, I also had similar experiences. I was on DIY drones, sort of like building my own kit in the early
right.
days. Um, but I wonder where that comes from. Do you think it's the hobby, or do you think it's just something innate to the fact that everyone's working on drones, or something else?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a deep interest in the subject, isn't it? I think
Hmm.
from the operators, and you're right. An awful lot of the operators that I've spoken to, started off as hobbyists.
Mm.
Nobody um, kind of goes straight into a drone job
Mm.
um, without having, at least had some interest in drones previously.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's a really strong community, and like you say, what I found on Facebook anyway, which was I dislike social media um, immensely, Facebook in particular, but it is an incredibly valuable tool for
Hmm.
getting involved with the community.
Hmm.
Um, and the drone community on Facebook is very strong. There's some large groups which have a broad spectrum of members.
Hmm.
From people that are just getting into drone operations as a hobby,
Hmm.
through professional drone operators that have been at it for 10 or 50 years
Mm.
with a huge amount of experience.
Yeah.
So, and what I've found is that those experienced operators are very willing and very open to sharing feedback and providing help and support to new operators. And certainly, when I started dipping my toe in and saying, "Look, have a look at this system. Tell me what you think,"
Hmm.
they were very enthusiastic because
Mm.
I think an awful lot of them were feeling the kind of pain that I was feeling
Yeah.
in terms of all the admin side of stuff. So anything that was going to make the job easier for them, they were all up for. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm eternally grateful to those people in those early kind of,
Yeah.
well, it turned out to be 12 months actually because of COVID, um,
Mm.
who provided all that feedback and allowed me to grow Dronedesk into what it is now.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's something, there's something really nice about when an industry is a young industry and everyone's sort of, trying to chip in, even if it's through feedback or through just, sharing their views,
Yeah,
because so much stuff has yet to be built, and I think drone industry is what, maybe 10 years, maybe 15 years old if you were to kind of really take the first commercial drone,
yeah, yeah,
DJI into account. But I think that being such a young industry, there's so much hardware, software, infrastructure, sensors yet to be built.
absolutely.
And I think people get very excited, don't they, when they sort of see someone taking the initiative of building something new for the community.
Yeah.
So when did that then sort of transition into, you had your first really excited, users giving you feedback, and then 12 months on, you sort of felt that maybe the product's sort of mature enough to kind of go to market with it. Was there sort of a very clear kind of um, indicator that, it's ready for that moment?
Yeah, so in the October of 2019, so kind of 12 months after I first released it, I started to offer a paid plan,
Hmm.
and got lots of people signing up. It's great, and at the time I was still offering a free plan
Hmm.
with limited functionality.
Hmm.
So the plan was then to in April
Hmm.
2020
Hmm.
to release it commercially. So
Hmm.
close the free plan and offer the just a paid version.
Hmm.
And obviously that that changed in April 2020 with
Right.
COVID. Um,
Mm.
so what happened was I continued to just offer the one play plan and still a free plan. And again, what that meant was we had an extended kind of beta testing period, which, although I thought I had a complete product, kind
Mm.
of led to a much more complete product. There was the the thing with drone operations, it evolves, with regulation and with technology.
Mhm.
It's not something that you can just develop something and deploy it and say that's it now. It's sorted.
Mm.
Um, so through that kind of extended beta testing period,
Mhm.
we had a load more feedback,
Mhm.
which meant there's a load more features added,
Mhm.
and we eventually released the first kind of fully commercial version in October 2020.
Right.
And by that time, it was not complete, but it was much more feature rich than the original version would have been. Um,
Right.
yeah, so that was the kind of timeline really, and
Mhm.
then from then we've just kind of grown steadily.
Right. And you mentioned a really interesting point. So with flight planning, operations planning, you've got to sort of stay on top of the regulation and sort of stay on top of how the rules are changing.
Yeah.
So how do you typically do that? Is that something that you just have to keep an eye on for, or are you sort of kind of trying to anticipate or kind of see, keep in touch with the experts to sort of see how the platform needs to sort of change to accommodate things for that?
Yeah. So ear to the ground
Hmm.
is the thing really. I mean, I'd love to say I had the ear of the CAA and a heads up on what they were about or planning to do,
Hmm.
but I don't. So I'm the same as everybody else. I hear when they hear
Hmm.
about what the CAA plan to do. So which is somewhat a little bit frustrating. I mean, it'd be
Hmm.
great. So REs, for example, have a group that regularly meet with the CAA and have the
Hmm.
year of CAA.
Hmm.
Software providers like you and me and others don't have that same luxury.
Hmm.
Um, but it would be great because there's a huge opportunity there for the CA to engage system providers like us,
Hmm.
um, to help them deliver automation, I think.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, they've got their own automation programs.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just ear to the ground, keep an eye on what CA are planning to do,
Hmm.
and then trying to incorporate um, any changes into the system as required.
Hmm.
So I mean, PDRA 01 was probably the biggest change
Hmm.
in terms of risk assessments that I had
Hmm.
to make. Um, last year or the year before.
Mhm.
Some time flying. Um,
No pun
but
intended
yeah,
on the.
yeah, exactly. And probably SORA is the next big thing.
Mhm.
So I'm already thinking about how we're going to be able to deliver SORA capability in the system,
Mhm.
um, particularly in terms of air risk and ground risk quantification.
Mhm.
So SORA obviously provides for a much more quantitative
Mhm.
approach to that.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm talking to providers who will hopefully help me deliver
Mhm.
those risk quantification metrics in the system
Right.
by the time the CA have a decision about what they're going to do. Um,
Mm.
so it's all about really trying to get ahead of the game if you possibly can,
Mm.
or B, just react to changes if you're not able to get ahead of the game
Right.
quickly,
Mhm.
so that operators can operate compliantly
Right.
to the latest regulations when they come out.
And is Dronedesk focused on particular geographies? So obviously the UK. I would imagine that you're also looking at the US or already are working heavily in the US. Um, but I would imagine that there are different regulations and rules in different geographies. So sort of how do you typically account for that? And are you sort of saying, only these geographies for now, and then we're going to open it out to other places? Or are you sort of saying it works best for these geographies, but you can use it for others?
Yeah, it's a challenge, geography's challenge
Mhm.
because of the variance in terms of regulation and so on.
Mhm.
So UK is our primary focus.
Mhm.
Um, we have a number of clients in the US,
Mhm.
so Dronedesk works fine in the US because
Mhm.
there are some kind of core things that all drone operators, no matter where they are in the world, will want to do. Generally
Mhm.
speaking, or you would hope they want to do, and
Mhm.
that's things like keep track of their assets,
Mhm.
um, and get some intelligence about where they're going to be flying. So
Mhm.
whether NOTAMs, air and ground hazard information. So all that's common really across the world.
Mhm.
Um, but then you've got nuances, right? So the US, for example, has the Lance authorization
Mhm.
process, and the FAA in the US don't make that Lance authorization API process openly available to everybody.
Mhm.
This is a long application process.
Mhm.
So for that reason, we don't do the Lance authorization bit in the US. But I think nailing that would
Mhm.
open the market up much more readily.
Mhm.
Um, but having said that, we've got a couple of really large operators over there that use us.
Mhm.
Europe, we've kind of steered away from at the moment, still waiting for them to land on SORA
Right.
2.5 to 3, whatever version they're going to land on.
Mhm.
But even then, within the countries within Europe, there's variance in terms of how they um, implement the regulations, right? So
Mhm.
it's not easy. Australia, we've looked at, and
Mhm.
again, there's compliance and certification issues there that we'd need to get over. So all
Mhm.
these kind of hurdles make it a challenge, particularly for a small company like us, to
Mhm.
a find the time to do it, and b be successful
Mhm.
in doing it, and then market in those regions as well. So yeah,
Okay.
UK primary focus, US big presence,
Mhm.
but Europe for the future and Australia and the likes, and then the world.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. No, in some sense, it's also a great filter in terms of like it just allows you to focus, doesn't it? It kind of just sort of says, well, just take over these geographies first and then go to other places. And I think
Yeah,
I've kind of made this mistake myself at Hammer Missions where you just want to sort of go for world domination and then you realize actually like here's the right sort of use cases, here's the right sort of customers, here's the right and just serve them really well
yeah,
and they'll just be able to sort of grow from that. And I think probably applies to every single drone service provider, and also people running drone programs. Because ultimately they've got their companies have got customers that they're focusing on. So may not be a bad thing in the end to kind
yeah.
of to have that almost imposed. One interesting thing you brought up was the sort of the processes that every drone operator around the world has to kind of go through, or you would hope that they go through. So I'm kind of curious to understand from your perspective, what does a well organized or well planned operation actually look like, and what sort of things should a drone operator, for those that are just starting out in the industry, what sort of things that they should be tracking, and to kind of have that well-oiled operation that isn't eating into their time, as we talked about earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so there are some fundamental things on there that everybody should be looking at. So weather, first and foremost, obviously. And weather's a challenge in itself, right? So we provide an hourly forecast for the location you're flying at in Dronedesk, and we pull that in from Apple. I'm an Android fanboy, but Apple bought out a company called Dark Sky a couple of years ago. Dark
Right.
Sky was a well-regarded forecast provider, so
Okay.
that's the reason why we use that. And we also pull in Metar and TAF, and we show a view of the windy.com forecast because people like the visual aspects of that. So we provide kind of three flavors of forecast, so people can choose the one that suits their purpose. Choose the one that shows it's not raining. So weather first and foremost, and then you're into the kind of safety things around NOTAMs. And NOTAMs in themselves are a challenge to find and interpret. So what we do is we pull them in independently from the FAA every half hour, all day long, and present only NOTAMs that are active on the day that the pilots can be flying, or said they're going to be flying, and are within the kind of flyaway radius of their location. We pre-filter some things out as well, so things like runway lights not working, that kind of stuff. So we try and kind of distill complex data into a simple interface so that it is easy for people to find and interpret. So that's NOTAMs. Then we've got air and ground hazard data. So, and that can range from airspace information to FRZs and ground hazards like schools and churches and all that kind of stuff. So we present that on a map with multiple layers of data that includes things like SSSI areas, RSPB areas, that kind of thing. So it's not just about, am I likely to encounter an aeroplane or a helicopter during my flight? It's about, am I going to endanger some birds? Am I going to scare some wildlife? That kind of stuff as well. So it's all those kinds of things you need to think about. And to gather all that data independently is a time-consuming process. So I'll say we pull it into a simple interface that gives them everything they need without any effort. All they need to do is enter a location. All that information that I've just talked about is instantly available to them.
Yeah.
So there's those things, and then you've got things like checklists. And that could be a loading checklist to make sure you've got everything you need on your van before you leave the office. Takeoff and landing checklists, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, the risk assessments, the all-important risk assessments. So doing all of those things, checking all of that data, enables you to create a safe and viable plan for your drone operation. And importantly, if you get the CAA knock on your door and say, we want to see what you're doing and how you're going about doing it in an audit, then something like Dronedesk gives you a really simple way to present that information to the CAA and demonstrate the fact that you've planned the flight as safely as possible.
Yeah, no, that's such an interesting point. And I think listening to that, I was thinking that you're not just saving people time, you're almost reducing their risk in the operation because, you kind of, indirectly, of course, they're doing it themselves, but you're providing them with a platform to do that in some sense.
Exactly. So, if you make it easy, people are much more likely to do it. If it's hard, if you've got to go through Nat's website and hunt through NOTAMs and do a search and then read it, you're not going to do it because it's just too difficult. So, make it really simple, really quick, and people are much more likely to do it. If they're more likely to do it, then they're much more likely to fly safely. Simple, isn't it, really?
Then they can get away from the desk job and go out there.
Exactly.
Do the flying.
Unlike me.
Well, that's interesting, right? You wanted to get away from a desk job, but I'd imagine you're back to
yeah.
That's the irony here.
Spending longer than ever in front of a desk.
You've actually got desk and Dronedesk.
Exactly.
That's interesting. But do you still do any flying, by the way, Dorian? Do you tend
No,
to
do
kind
you know
of?
what? I've got a Mini
Mhm,
3.
mhm.
I don't know where it is actually.
Mhm.
And if I'm honest, I can't remember the last time I charged it up now.
Wow. Okay.
Sad, isn't it?
They are easy to plug in, like the
I know.
USB-C.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's the challenge, of course, is the weather, isn't it? Like I think especially like, since this is obviously being recorded in the UK, so I think
Yeah.
it's just finding that one day when it's just really nice day to be able to go out there and fly, and you can spend a good couple of hours. Whenever that day happens, you have something else going on, and you're just like, oh, I
Exactly.
don't have my drone with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, they have made the Mini 3 to be compact enough to carry everywhere. But yeah, it needs to be charged.
It does. It does.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So okay, and so you obviously started providing a commercial offering, and it's been growing steadily since that point. Now, in terms of your core focuses, or in terms of where you see Dronedesk going, what are the plans? In terms of this year, or the next 18 months, how does the kind of Dronedesk what are the areas you're really focused on, really want to sort of expand into?
Uh, so kind of next 12, 18 months really is all about SORA, I think.
Mhm. Right.
Um, that we're definitely going to see that arrive in the UK,
Hmm.
and established in Europe. So
Hmm.
that really is kind of foremost in my mind at the moment, in terms of how we're going to deliver that,
Hmm.
and make it simpler for operators. So,
Mm.
if they're going to draw a flight corridor on a map in Dronedesk, what I'd like to be able to do is give them a ground, air and ground
Hmm.
risk quantification value for that flight,
Mm.
um, to align with their SORA submission. So, but I've got to develop that in a way that is flexible, so
Hmm.
that we can react to what the CAA eventually land on. See what's on
Mm.
the pun, in terms of how it's going to work. So it's a challenge,
Hmm.
but that's my primary focus. And then we've got, there's a constant evolution of things that are going on in the system. So,
Hmm.
we're delivering new flight log processing,
Hmm.
um, things, for example, to enable systems like yours to push logs directly into Dronedesk, which is going to
Hmm.
be a step forward.
Hmm.
So developing that and other log processors,
Hmm.
because there are constantly new models and variants of drones coming out,
Yeah.
new manufacturers appearing, so we have to cater for all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and just kind of keeping up with regulation as well. If things change, so
Hmm.
if a new PDRA, new suite of PDRAs come out, then we need to cater for that kind of stuff as well.
Right.
But yeah, it's
Right.
a
Yeah.
constant evolution.
Yes, and I think the point you made about new drones coming out, and new types of flight logs, and I think that sort of ties back to what we were talking about earlier with the industry kind of having to there's so many people that are engaged and want things to be built, but I think one of the challenges, at least I find sometimes, is that because it's an industry where so many things need to line up together for a successful operation,
Yeah,
sometimes I find that there are interfaces into products that are open, um, but they're not. I think everyone focuses on their customer, but not so much on their partner.
yeah,
And indirectly, the customer feels that. So you might use product A with product B, but you know they're both focused on serving the customer, but product A and B are not very focused on working together.
yeah, yeah,
And that's sometimes the challenge. And I wish there was, for example, with logs, if you just had like some standard that everyone could just adhere to, but no, everyone's sort of got their own format. And so
yeah, yeah.
now you've got to integrate with all the different formats. Yeah.
It's a great point, Vern. Guilty as charged. We spoke probably 18 months, 2 years ago, about me providing an interface for you to push logs, and we've only just done that, so,
Yeah.
because exactly as you've said,
Mm.
um, we've been focused on kind of delivering what the client wants in terms of functionality in the system, as
Yeah.
opposed to operating smoothly with other applications.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll probably need to do better at that, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also sometimes what we find is that you could have the underlying infrastructure change. So, for example, we had a flight logging integration on iOS, and we wanted to replicate that on Android. Or we thought we could just basically use the iOS integration and carry on with that. But DJI comes out and says we're not working with Apple anymore. So that means
Yeah,
that anyone built on top of Apple, all of that infrastructure, all those integrations they might have done are actually no longer
bin
valid.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, so it's an interesting sort of it's almost like a and you've got the foundation block being the hardware somewhere, and if the hardware manufacturer changes something, then all the integrations above it are basically
it all crumbles. Yeah,
crumbles to say. Um, yeah,
yeah,
so but you do integrate with quite a few third parties, I'd imagine that you do work with partners to be able to pull all that data in and to be able to actually provide that sort of nice centralized place. You mentioned Apple and the weather data,
yeah.
which obviously is important. How do you sort of go about sort of picking the right partners, the right sort of integrations for the platform?
Yeah, the research.
Hmm.
So lots of research, trying different applications. Whether I've tried multiple different weather APIs over the years,
Hmm.
and kind of landed on this one because it's just more reliable, more robust than the others I've tried. Um, Aaron Grouse has a data, was fairly straightforward, really. I did initially start using a company called AirMap in the US,
Yeah.
who folded.
Mm.
But there was some unreliability and some issues with their data.
Hmm.
So fairly early on, I settled on Altitude Angel
Hmm.
in the UK.
Hmm.
They're as close as we got in the UK to a standard kind of UTM provider,
Hmm.
and their data has been kind of rock solid. So
Mm.
yeah, worked with them for 4 years now, probably.
Right.
So that's Aaron Graham has the stuff, but then there's all the other bits and pieces, simple things like converting Latin longs to postcodes
Hmm.
and vice versa, and converting more through words addresses and all that kind of stuff. So all of those things require
Hmm.
API connections in the background, API calls in the background.
Hmm.
So yeah, I spent an inordinate amount of time testing different APIs to ensure that we get the right data reliably and
Mm.
quickly,
Yeah.
what we need.
Which is great because to a user for Dronedesk, you've kind of already done all that effort for them, right? And so they don't have to then go out there and kind of use every separate service,
Exactly.
and sort of spend time trying to figure out many interfaces and try
That's
to
right.
get data out, data in.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and everyone does
And then
export to CSV and everyone does import CSV, but do you really want to do that? Or, and KML files the same, it just doesn't make
yeah,
sense.
no,
Um,
no, exactly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And then of course I run into the same trouble as that you have as a drone operator, trying to justify the cost of something to
yeah,
my client,
yeah,
because they don't see all that stuff that goes on in the background, right?
yeah,
They just see a pretty interface with everything they need and think
yeah,
magic.
yeah. They're like
Um,
UTM. What's UTM?
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
you know, yeah, interesting conversations about the cost of the system. We've been through multiple iterations of costs and feature sets and subscription plans
yeah,
for the system. And that's what a big challenge actually for SaaS operations, I think, is settling on the right pricing structure
yeah,
for an application so that the client feels they're getting the right value for money.
yeah. And I think pricing in general, I think is an interesting point in our industry, isn't it? Because I think there is always a lot of I think price can be quite contentious, and I think people are always trying to kind of see whether they should price by their cost, by what's the competitive price, or and then I think very few people are sort of pricing by value in terms of like what is the value to the end customer.
Yeah.
Um, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's a function of our industry at this point, or do you think that's sort of something that will evolve over time and get better? Like, yeah, just wondering what your thoughts are on the last few years of
Yeah,
pricing in the industry.
yeah. I don't think it's in our industry specific.
Hmm.
Customers have an expectation because there is so much stuff that you can get for free
Hmm.
um, on the internet. Um, then people's expectations are that most of the time they'll get whatever they need for
Hmm.
free.
Hmm.
Um, and that's fine. If you're running something like Facebook, you can afford to offer free access because what you're getting in return is almost limitless data about billions of people, right?
Yeah.
But running a small SaaS with a
Yeah.
limited client base
Mm.
give you the luxury or scale that you would need in order to be able to exploit the data that you have access to. So, the reality is that you have to charge
Yeah.
a price, a fair price for the value that you provide to your clients.
Mm.
But not every client has the same perception of value, right? What's valuable to one client isn't to another. So it is difficult. It's been one of the biggest challenges, I think,
Hmm.
um, for Dronedesk is settling on the right um, subscription plan structure and price.
Mm.
Because as you say, people are really sensitive to
Yeah.
pricing.
Yeah.
Um, and I still get people saying to me that I'm not going to continue subscribing because it's way too expensive. And
Mm.
yet I get people on the phone who say, you're not charging enough for this.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult, and then there's a huge core of people in the middle who are
In the
quite
middle.
happy with the value that they get given the
Yeah.
price that they charge. So it is difficult, and it's easy to listen to the people at the periphery and think,
Hmm.
oh, crikey, I better give it away free, otherwise I'm never going to get any customers. Or
Yeah.
crikey, I better double the cost because I'm not, I could earn much more from this.
Mm.
But striking a balance is a challenge.
Yeah.
I think we've got there now, to be fair.
Yeah. 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 Just have to iterate on it. And I think what you brought up is such a good point. I think different people have different perception of price. And I think it could also be because they're in a different place in their journey. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and that's completely okay. Sometimes you have a user that's just starting out, so maybe they can't afford to sort of, pay for different services just as yet. But
Yeah,
once they've got a couple of jobs under their belts, they've sort of started building up their business. They have to inevitably because they have to be efficient. If they're not efficient, they're not going to grow. I think that's
yeah,
just
exactly.
every business owner needs to understand that. And I think on the other end, yeah, you've got maybe, really efficient users who probably really want to sort of, they're happy to pay more to get more, something like that. And, it's how do we service those customers the best way possible is also really an interesting question.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, pricing has definitely been an interesting, and you're right, it's not just our industry, it's probably true for most industries. But it's probably also because we as an industry serve many different verticals. So, drones are being used for so many different things,
yeah,
agriculture, construction, engineering, wedding photography,
yeah,
search and rescue. And then all of those industries have a different sort of tolerance and price because the value you know, on those things is completely different as well. So probably
yeah,
there's some influence that leaks into the industry. And so if you're an operator doing doing a survey for this, and then you see an operator doing a survey and charging more, but they're doing a different type of survey, that doesn't, it's not apples to apples,
no,
even though
no,
using
exactly.
both using drones. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um, in terms of the ecosystem and the industry, I think just kind of looking a bit broader and kind of looking out, what do you think? Firstly, like, what are things that you've sort of seen that have changed in the last few years that you thought this was really interesting, um, and looking beyond, where do you sort of like see the industry going? What sort of things are you expecting? Um, yeah, just curious to sort of see what kind of
yeah.
things.
Well, yeah. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me the different use cases for drones. We have operators doing all kinds of things. What I'm really excited about at the moment is agriculture. I think
Hmm.
that has huge potential.
Hmm.
And there are companies in the UK now who have got authorization, CAA, to do spraying
Right. Yeah.
Pesticide spraying will be the next big evolution in that. But
Mhm.
I think we're an agricultural country.
Mhm.
Lots of the UK is fields, right?
Yeah.
And the opportunity for farmers to save huge amounts of money by employing drones instead of traditional spraying methods is just a mega opportunity, I think. And it's not only spraying crops, it's spraying shading onto greenhouses and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which represents a big step forward for them in terms of safety,
Mhm.
let alone cost and
Mhm.
time that they save. So
Mhm.
um, agriculture is a big industry and one that's going to only grow, I think, over the next few years.
Yeah.
So if I was starting out now,
Yeah.
I'd
Is
be
that you'll
buying
be
a
looking? All right.
yeah, I'd be buying a Zag or a DJI Agras and
Amazing.
getting out there. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
that's what I'd be doing.
That's such a
Um,
good point. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, and then yeah, it's just a unique use case. So we've got an operator that uses called Aerial Ashes,
Mhm.
which I think is probably one of the most unique drone use cases at the moment. And what they do is they spread human ashes
Oh,
from their
okay.
drone for bereaved families if they want the ashes spread somewhere that might be inaccessible, out to sea or
Oh,
up a
wow.
mountain or something
Mm.
like that. Then Aerial Ashes will take care of that for you.
Oh, wow.
So it's your imagination is the only limitation, I think, in terms of what you can do with
Yes.
drones.
Oh, yes. Oh, this is, yeah. So, yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think I'm sort of seeing very similar, very interesting use cases, but more on sort of the building side of things.
Yeah,
I think one tailwind in the UK now is the Building Safety Act. So
yeah,
I think all the multi-story buildings, 11-story or above, you've got to have, all the inspections done,
yeah.
during the build and then post build. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there because obviously the alternative to get a cherry picker or a scaffolding is just not viable.
No, no, exactly.
So I think having that sort of viability with the drone is really interesting. And then the other things that I'm sort of seeing is also people are creating these drones that can not just sort of scan the surface or scan the building, but also have some form of robotic manipulators attached to them so they can actually touch the surface and sample the surface
Right. Yeah,
for NDT non-destructive testing and things like that, and actually get
yeah,
samples from inaccessible areas. Um, and yeah, to me, it's just like, to anyone, I guess, that's been operating drones for a while, you don't want to get too close to a building. But some of these drones that I'm looking at, yeah, they're really interesting in how they've been engineered to get so close and
yeah,
almost sort of land on the side of the building and take a sample and then fly away.
yeah, yeah.
Really interesting stuff.
It is. And then
So
there's a drone in the box, of course,
yes, of
which
course,
will
yeah,
be a yeah. So I can see those growing dramatically as well.
yes.
Um,
Yeah, I've been seeing solar parks are sort of now looking at sort of adopting some of these to have, one positioned by solar parks, construction sites, of course. I guess anywhere you need a permanent deployment, it
yeah,
makes sense. Um, Still sort of outside the framework and for it to be fully autonomous, I would imagine. So, you still need your operator there, but still from a storage
yeah.
perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah,
uh,
but I think they'll be fully autonomous in the not too distant future. I think
yeah.
once regulations are um, confirmed in terms of BB loss stuff, and the CAA's latest consultation about BB loss looks really interesting,
Hmm.
and will enable some of that stuff,
Hmm.
and particularly enable some of the unsupervised drone in the box,
Mm.
which will be fascinating and a big opportunity.
Yes.
But it's difficult as well because a lot of drone operators make a living surveying solar sites, right? In your example,
Mm.
so are they going to have to adapt? Are they going to have to find a different um, opportunity, or are they going to get into drone in a box and
Mm.
deploy their own? So I think the industry is so fluid and evolves so quickly
Yeah.
that no matter what, if you're willing to put the work in, find an opportunity, you can definitely make a living at this industry.
Yes, absolutely. And get away from a desk job.
Yeah,
Somewhat.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
One day, one day.
one day, yes. Still got the dream.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Dorian, I know we get coming close to the to our time today, but it's been a pleasure speaking to you and
Likewise.
learning more about your story with Dronedesk. Yeah, really excited to sort of see what comes out with Dronedesk over the next, year or 18 months, and also looking forward to working with you from Hammer Mission's perspective. So yeah, really thankful for coming on board today, and hopefully we can do this again.
It's been a pleasure, as always, Varun. Thank you for having me,
Brilliant.
for letting me waffle on.
Lovely, lovely to have you, Dorian, and we'll have you again. Brilliant.
All right, great. Cheers, Varun.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.